Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the NeuroVerse podcast. Today, we have a special guest on. It's Miss Saima, and she's going to be sharing some of her experiences as a mother with a child on the spectrum. And so, yeah, thank you for coming on,
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
of course. Okay, so kind of just jumping right into it. Can you kind of share a bit about your family and when you first noticed signs of autism in your child?
Yeah, absolutely. So Essence, my firstborn, he's 16 now, but I think we definitely had some sort of as a mom, well, first time mom, but like a gut instinct, parents say they have like some sixth sense with their kids or with whatever. So I think I always had some sort of gut instinct or gut feeling since he was younger. Um, and he never really showed overt signs too much of like being on the spectrum. But like one of the biggest red flags was that, he was very delayed in speech, very common. And like, of course, they say boys are late speakers, but that was a big thing. And then, of course, I think the other part was like the social piece, where he wasn't very much like as part of like typical kids wanting to interact so much with other kids. I think for me as a first time mom, I was young, was only like 24 at that time. So didn't really have friends that were even had kids.
Mm-hmm.
And like my siblings, like one of my siblings didn't really even have something this of the sort. It was very new for us, right? So I didn't have that experience that I could even associate this with like autism. I think when we moved, and when Essen was about 2 years old, we moved away from our home environment, like where my parents were and friends and family. We were by ourselves for the first time. I put him in a daycare. I think that was the first time where I actually noticed. I'm like, okay, he's not on par as his other peers, right? So we went to the doctors. Doctor was, unfortunately, he just said, he's a boy. He's going to speak late. It kind of really discounted it. But it was very interesting because there was like a medical student there at the doctor's office,
Mm-hmm.
and he said to me, he's like, he's out making eye contact. And, it's something I didn't actually notice myself, but kind of like with the gut feeling now at that time, where like we've moved, he's in a new place and like, okay, he's not like on par. All of a sudden you see like all these like gaps behind like his peers.
Yeah.
And the doctor was like, no, he's fine. He's a boy. Everything looks okay. You feel happy, innerly, but then you're like, okay, there's still that gut feeling where like, I don't think that there's something right. But then like the medical student kind of flagged something.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, we go to the doctor again. Again, he was like, oh, he's a boy. They don't speak until a little bit later anyway. But even then, we got him diagnosed, went to speech therapy, got like gosh, it's been a while. It's been like 14, 15 years, but he got diagnosed right before he turned 4 years old, with autism spectrum, not otherwise specified. At that time, there was like a larger umbrella, right?
Yeah.
Now everything's kind of under autism spectrum disorder. So it was kind of like, no, the battle was like the journey was now beginning of like, okay, how do we get up surfaces and um try to bridge this gap that he has that we don't really know what to do. So
Uh-huh.
that's kind of where we landed. So he's 16 now, but we definitely had a journey at that time point.
Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. Uh, I think you kind of just answered this, but if you can just go maybe a little bit more, kind of, if there were any more problems, kind of cover those a little bit. But what was your experience like during the diagnosis project, and how did you feel when you received the diagnosis?
Yeah, so at the time when he was diagnosed, we kind of moved around a little bit. So when we kind of started first noticing that he might show signs, I I I had, like I said, a sixth sense, but I was also had a kind of like this gut feeling something's not right.
Yeah.
We didn't know many people where we moved, so we weren't associating with like other families, and we didn't have any family support circle, which is super important in this type of situation to have that support circle there. But we didn't have anybody. Only person was I could talk to like, my sister, and she also kind of was had kind of like kind of walking on eggshells a little bit, like because he was a sensitive topic, but kind of was like maybe you should try to get him checked out. Um, so we ended up, he never fit like the full criteria of like, you say hand flapping, talking, walking on tippy toes, lining things up, having repetitive behaviors. He didn't have all of that, but he did definitely do scripting, he wasn't like speaking, he was not socializing. So there's definitely some like a lot of things that were not there that should have been there. So leading up to that, we moved back to New Jersey and right around like when he was 3.5 and we had a really big struggle getting into a neurodevelopment pediatrician. There is a lot of kids that need support, but there's a lot of really big delay in the amount of time it takes for them to actually get an appointment to get diagnosed, which is a big problem in our healthcare system. And not just here. I've connected with people in, Canada as well as UK and part of support groups that you see like on Facebook and
Yeah,
connect
yeah.
with people that are kind of initially going through diagnosis and you hear all these stories and I'm like, oh my God, it's horrible. So we waited like maybe 6 months to get him a diagnosis and
Oh
get
wow.
in to get a diagnosis. And you would think like at that time point, 6 months is a long time, right? You can start getting therapy. And unfortunately, the other problem was like belatedly, I found out that, there's something called early intervention, right? So if anybody that's like before 3 years of age, you can get per the state, they pay for early intervention for social speech, ABA therapy. I had no clue. I had no guidance. I didn't know anything. Right. So that unfortunately, and one of the things you learn and still really bothers me from inside is the fact that if you kind of catch it early on and start getting therapy at 18 months, 16 months, 15 months, before 3, there's a lot of things that you could overcome.
Yeah.
And he missed that opportunity, but it is what it is, right? We take it from, where we stand. We got him diagnosed around, like I said, right before his 4th birthday at a neurodevelopment pediatrician in New Jersey. And, she was like right away, like that, he has, they did a couple tests and like, okay, he has, this autism, but it was kind of like anticlimactic, I would think, because it was like, okay, you kind of just, confirmed what I already knew.
Yeah.
And I remember I had just had another baby. She was just a couple months old, and I wasn't working, and it was a rainy day, and it was just you kind of remember those moments when you're coming back, and you're like, okay, where do you go from here now? And that was the big question I think a lot of parents face is like, okay, diagnosis happens, you get a paperwork, this is what it is, and now what do you do with that, right? Like, where do I go? What do I do for my kid to help him?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of emotions. I think the biggest thing was, I think, you get kind of like confirmation, which in a way is a little bit closure. You're like, all right, now I kind of know, like for sure, this is what it is. But then now there's a little bit of that. There's a lot of stress on kind of knowing the unknown, right? You don't know what to expect. Like you have a kid that's 4, okay, most likely kid's going to go to preschool, this, that, whatever activities, but someone with autism don't know what's the next step, right? So it was unknown territory completely. So we started him on ABA therapy, which is applied behavioral analysis therapy, and we chose that because that's what the doctor recommended.
Yeah.
We found a lady in by our house, and she had just opened up a practice, but she seemed to be clicked, and she had just opened up a practice. So Essen was kind of like one of her first kind of patients that she had experienced from before. We loved her. She was really good. But Essen, we kind of did intense therapy, 20 hours every week, and it was a lot. It was a lot, and but she got him to start talking.
Yeah.
So that was that was that was a big thing. He didn't talk until he was like 5 or 6, and it was a big challenge trying to understand what he wanted to convey, but also going through the emotions of like, you're seeing peers trying to like his peer age, like
Yeah.
they're overcoming, and like even his siblings are kind of like overcoming like the things that he should have been doing. They're younger than him, but they're like advanced, right? So
Right.
you kind of have to like reconcile that as a parent that it's okay, right? Like as long as there's progress, slow progress, but progress is important. And
Yeah.
that's what we should kind of keep mind of sight on.
Okay. Thank you. And you said so this diagnosis thing kind of went down how like you said 12, 13 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, it's been 14. Yeah, he was four, so he's 16 at 12 years ago.
12 years ago. Okay. So now that it's been like quite a while, uh, how how is like the kind of typical day and like what does that entail? Like your routines and your daily activities and that type of stuff.
Yeah, that's a good question. So Essen's very independent. We've kind of wanted him to be independent in the manner of like being able to be self-sufficient.
Yeah.
That's been our primary goal. So we moved down to Dallas about 4 years ago, right in the middle of COVID. And he was we kind of just carried on the school that he was in before we had moved and just went to virtual school. He was in a special education program. Um, not for the most part, it was 100% special education. And special education is interesting in America because it works for some people. It's they're limited, right? Like
Yeah.
with what they're able to do, state funded, and the teachers are very good. They're hardworking, but it's not maybe for every kid, or maybe it wasn't for my kid because I know the potential he has, and I really felt like he wasn't getting that maximum level of potential, reaching that. And the school environment, it only clicked to me when he started doing school at home and um, during COVID. And I'm like, okay, this is maybe not for him. So, we pulled him from the program from school, public school.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm going to homeschool him. And it was a big step because I work full time from home. I have a pretty demanding job, but I wanted to I thought that's something that is important because I need to be able to make sure he's able to reach his maximum potential now at this time, or they're saying 4 years back, right?
Mm-hmm.
He, along with autism, he has dyslexia. He had ADHD. We started him with medication for ADHD and like anxiety when he was like 5 years old. Okay. And in hindsight, I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. I didn't know better,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not an excuse because it's something that I still feel regret on that I should not have, just because I felt like that maybe it was the right thing to do at that time. But you know, um, never know. Like in hindsight, a lot of things, everything is like everyone's a genius, right? You
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
back and you're like everyone's a genius in hindsight. But I'm kind of thinking that at that point he was in special ed before we moved here. He was on medication. He was on, which totally, changes a person's whole demeanor and behavior. And, when we pulled him from the school, we also stopped his medication. And I was like, I'm going to try to do this without all of that and kind of be able to just see what we can do and kind of take it slowly. And I think one thing I struggled with as a mom was I wanted so much, and I think, parents just want so much for their kids. You see like the potential, but and then you also struggle with the the loss of the loss of a future that
Mm.
you feel like he could have had, but he's not going to be able to reach, right?
Mm.
Like, so, but then that's how I used to feel. And it's taken me a long time to understand that everyone's path is different. Just because he's not going the normal path as everybody else. Like I went, middle school, high school, college, job, get married, doesn't mean that a different path is a wrong path, right?
Right. Right.
So you pulled him from school and homeschooled him. Now it's very different to find a homeschooling program for a kid that has, special needs.
Right.
And at that time, he's always struggled with reading and writing, and he has dyslexia. Never was able to get diagnosed with dyslexia because of all the other comorbidities he has, but I knew he has it. So one of my biggest first things was I need to get him to read properly. You know, he's 13 years old. He, unfortunately, his mind can't grasp that reading part. But if you can't read, can't really do much in life, right?
Yeah.
So, I just found programs, did my own things, created things that was something that would be beneficial for him specifically. And, just took it one step at a time. And it's been successful. I would call it something that I find has been successful because I look back to him how where he was at, and you kind of just look at the present, but if you look back at all the progress he's made, and he's such a hard worker. I really feel so proud of him because he has definitely overcome a lot of the challenges he had. So in normal typical household, to answer your question, Ali, he's self-sufficient with his showers, laundry. He does
Mm-hmm.
takes care of all of that, like laundry and putting away his stuff. So he's managed that himself, takes a shower, cleans his bathroom, cleans his bed, makes his own breakfast. We've taught him, he makes his own breakfast every day. He's been for many years and he knows what he wants. And even if I say, hey, Asan, I'll make it for you, but no, I'll make it myself. Like he knows exactly how he wants it. Which is great because there's one less thing for me to do as a working mom and I have three other kids. I don't have to worry about him. He manages that himself. And I think, another thing for kids on the spectrum definitely is change. If something doesn't fit into their schedule, it bothers them. They
Yeah.
get like really a lot of anxiety. And that used to be the case before, but now we've had coping mechanisms, and I think he's just grown into it.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, it's not a challenge anymore, right? So one day we're out of eggs. Okay, he'll figure out something else, right?
Yeah.
So that's good. So, after breakfast, he'll usually go water his plants because he's a gardener. He loves to garden. That's something that he's very interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And he loves to exercise. So he usually fits in exercise throughout the day, whether it's in the morning or in the evening or during in between his class schedule. Now, he always starts off his day with his reading program because that's super important. And for the first few years, we homeschooled. I was very much involved. Um, and I felt like I think with kids on the spectrum, and maybe even not kids on the spectrum, but I
Yeah.
think kids become dependent on parents, right?
Right.
Like you're
Right.
there. So I think one of the things I wanted to do was take a step back, see how independent he can get, because ultimately it'll be for his benefit, to find that independence and be able to do things himself. So he has his own, I make his schedule, like as if, anyone's going to school, they have their schedule for the day. So
Mm-hmm.
he has a schedule. He's pretty much on top of it. I've told him, he needs to just get the stuff done, whether he does it first, second, third, whatever. He has a math program that he's working on, which is really good. And, I think one of the things with math is like with reading, it is what it is, right? Like reading comprehension, working on that. Math definitely is another challenge for him. And I've kind of reconciled to the fact that, whatever he can do at this time point is a success. So he's mastering things on his own level, and we'll keep moving forward until the point he's able to do it.
Yeah.
But one of the things that he does every day as part of his routine is he writes. So he's a writer.
Mm-hmm.
He calls himself a teenage author. So he's a teenager. He likes to write. He creates a lot of really good stories, and I think that's amazing,
Yeah.
because a kid who could not read, he can write. And I feel like one of the best things I did was pull him from the school system. For us, that worked, right? It
Mm-hmm.
might not work for somebody else in their environment and their structure and their kids' needs, but for us, it worked. And yeah, he creates a lot of stories, and he's published his first ebook, which is amazing, where he's every day we try to change up his structure every day for on a daily basis on what he's working on. So he does science and history with his dad. So he's working on some chemistry sort of lessons with his dad. With me, he's doing graphic design right now. And
Oh.
he's doing like some sort of like, so he's learning Photoshop and
Mm-hmm.
InDesign. What I really want to get for him is to be able to open his mind up,
Mm-hmm.
right? and push him to be able to do more, not just stay in a bubble and limit him.
Yeah.
If he's not interested in something, that's fine, but at least give him the opportunity. So we signed him up on a robotics class, which he started last weekend, and he loves it. He is is great. He's a builder on top of writing. That's something another thing he gets involved in. So he's building things. He usually takes the video while he's doing it. One thing I want to teach him is how to video edit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a lot of like multi-step things. So ultimately, my goal for him is to be able to think things through independently and take multiple steps, right? Break it down what the problem is, take it step by step, and be able to do it by himself and have a finished product. Now, he can do so much, right? Like he
Yeah.
could build the biggest buildings, which I can't do step by step, but I feel like it's interesting, kids with on the spectrum. There's so much they can do, but there's a gap in many other things. So
Yeah.
understanding what that gap is and trying to overcoming it, supporting him where he needs it is one of my goals. So yeah, he'll do that. He makes his own lunch,
Mm-hmm.
which is great. Don't have to worry about that. And he's exercises. He, goes out for a walk. He likes to
Yeah.
ride a bike. So if it's not super hot, he'll go out for riding the bike. So yeah, that's kind of like his schedule for the day. I think really just goal is to be self-sufficient, independent, learn new skills, and kind of keep moving forward.
Yeah. Sounds very self-sufficient. I don't even know how to cook, so maybe he could teach me. But let's see. So I'd say, all right. So I think you touched on this just a little bit when you were talking earlier. But what type of support systems do you rely on, like formally or informally? Either like some actual support group or just like your family or
Yeah,
friends.
I think it's definitely I haven't had any friends really that have had anybody that's been on the spectrum that I could relate to. I know after Austin was diagnosed and we were kind of like a few years into it, I had and found out people just through other people that, oh, somebody else's kid had was on the spectrum and oh, would you be able to talk to that person and maybe give your experience and share or whatever and kind of help them through because it's definitely when someone gets initially diagnosed, it's you need that support system. I think having family is for sure a supportive family is a great blessing, even if you just want to talk and vent through, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone can 100% understand
Right.
until you're in that position of having whether, like a child that's on the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Um, but that doesn't mean that family can't support because sometimes you just need a sibling to lend an ear and you can cry and vent. And that for that moment is makes you feel better, right? And then you just
Mm-hmm.
kind of wipe your tears away and you move on. Um, I've not been part of any support groups, but there's online support like Facebook and you kind of
Yeah.
are part of groups and you hear from other parents and learn things and kind of understand that, wow, it could be a lot worse. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's definitely something that I always remind myself on that whatever it is, it could be a lot worse. He's a great kid. Nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
But I think since we moved to Dallas, just recently we joined like part of our mosque. They have the Mohsin program, and you might be familiar with a lot of the bigger mosques here have it, and it's good because they have like a group, and you can like be part of like a group where there's other parents that have similar sort of kids, and then you're able to like speak and discuss and share and just have a chat on like, okay, what are you guys doing? And just finding someone of like mind. I think
Yeah.
that's been helpful. Yeah, so I'm not a big advocate, unfortunately. I don't have the time to go
Mm-hmm.
and be public speaking about this. I wish I did, but I definitely think the people that are in that space and do that, they do help like us
Yeah.
folks that aren't like that. Yeah.
Uh huh. Okay. Let's see. So, mm, so what advice would you give to parents who are kind of like maybe just finding out that the child's on the spectrum, or or they have really young children with that may be on the spectrum or something like that?
I mean, I think the parents that have kids that haven't yet been diagnosed, but maybe they feel like something's maybe not right.
Uh huh.
I think parents should go with their gut feeling and try to at least get an appointment, get it
Yeah.
checked out. Think they shouldn't delay it. Look into services. Takes time, right, for services even to begin, appointments to even have. So, but really don't discount your gut feeling as a parent. I think there's a lot of value in that. Um, and really lean in heavily with your support system, whether it's your spouse and or your family members, your friends. Find people that will support you, even if you're in a place where you don't want to be supported,
Yeah.
but they won't let you go. Um, and just understand that a diagnosis doesn't mean anything for a kid. A diagnosis is just something that will allow them to get services. And that's really what it is. It doesn't change who they are,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't change love that you have for them. It will just open up your mind and your opportunities for a little bit of a different pathway. And it doesn't mean the end, right? It means really just a new way of beginning, a new path that will be an experience for both, the person, individual that's on the spectrum, that's who's really going through, as well as the family members and caregivers that are supporting it. And then I think lastly, I would say give yourself grace. It's
Yeah.
important, right? I think giving yourself a parent, giving yourself grace and understanding that it's okay to be sad.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to feel that you lost something, like lost a potential future.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel that. But I do feel like um, one shouldn't let them get it down so much where they get into depression and doesn't really help their kid, right? Like I went
Yeah.
through a very bad time with after he was diagnosed, and it was slowly, but it was a very, very dark time. I got myself out of it, but I just feel like I wish I hadn't felt like that. But then I think back and I think that I think it was necessary because it made me stronger as a parent, because I realized that me feeling like that didn't solve anything for him. It didn't get me anything for him. Um, and only until I actually understood that was when I was able to help him in the way he needed help, right? He was so dependent on me, and I needed to be there for him and meet him in the middle of where he needed, not where I wanted him to be, where I was thinking he should be because I want him to be like that. No,
Yeah.
I need to meet him to where he is. And only then he was able to progress forward, right? And he surprises me so much on how much he can do, um, and how kind he is. And so much potential. So I think as a parent who's just maybe getting a diagnosis, don't think it's the end.
Yeah.
There's so much that you will learn along this path, and just like hold your child's hand and move on forward, and give yourself grace. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to feel down sometimes, but lean into your support system at those points and, vent, cry, whatever it may be, but then pick yourself up and, be there for the next day.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing this kind of vulnerable, sensitive topic. But yeah, thank you for coming on and sharing this with us.
Yeah,
I'm very grateful for that.
absolutely, Ellie. Thanks for having me. Hope I was able to answer all your questions. But this was a nice opportunity for me to connect. So thank you.
Thank you.